Well, this was the season finale, and they another 2-hour extravaganza. I liked this in some ways even more. That the Andre search we mentioned was heartwarming and had a chance to fill in some of him as a person and a human being. This one was just an excuse to watch that great old footage and all the Mid-Atlantic stuff, the Carolina stuff. And they even had a few clips of the Mid-Atlantic films, 4th and 5th generation. They should have made the deal for my original films, and they could have redigitized those suckers. But anyway, I liked the way, obviously, as we saw at the conclusion, by the time the show was over, we know what they did again, but at least they did a better job of it this time in making it a search. They picked their items because they located them. And then they decided which ones would be the holy grails to search for. But they made it more of a mystery. They built it up at the start in the cold open in the early part of the program, like the Curse of Oak Island, right? We got to find this robe. Last seen in Johnson City, Tennessee. I can understand with some of the fine young ladies in Johnson City how Flair may have been distracted. But I love the old footage, and it was great. Just the juxtaposition of him with the promo with, oh God, what was the announcer's name? Was that Big Bill Ward?
Big Bill Ward, yeah.
Big Bill Ward in Raleigh in 1974 with Rip Hawk. He's on film, then he's on videotape, then he's on DVD, and by the time modern day, he's a cultural icon with all the rappers. And where, I wonder, did they find the footage of Miss Olivia making the robes and being interviewed? Was that on a Florida program or a Georgia program sometime back that they would have in the library?
I am not exactly sure, but I did not think it would be either one of those two places that would have that. It seemed like it was something outside of wrestling, quite frankly.
And that's what I've never seen that footage. So I was, gratified that they found it somewhere. Anyway, they put a value on the Starrcade 83 robe at $50,000 and the black butterfly robe $70,000 to $90,000. Why couldn't they open up the valuations and the floodgates like that earlier in the series when poor Greg Valentine got $1,000 for his boots? Come on, show everybody else a little love. But basically, they went on the search for these. You saw later on, I don't want to give it away, but you saw later on how they found the black butterfly robe. So they built this show around the fact that some poor hotel worker in Johnson City had kept it all these years because Flair left it behind, and finally he needs money for his father's tombstone. And he sold it on eBay, and I'm sure they had footage of them seeing that. This just sold on eBay for $10,000.
Yeah, that little fake scene.
But I believe it sold for $10,000.
I believe that. And I believe they knew that before they started filming any of this.
Exactly. But anyway, on the search, at least we got to see Flair sit down with Darius Rucker. And he's a huge wrestling fan. We've mentioned this before. As a matter of fact, where the Mid-Atlantic film sets, they could have either got one from Flair or Darius Rucker because they both got a set that are in better quality than the stuff they were showing. But nevertheless, that's because they got it from the source. So did you like even though they kind of misidentified it, the footage of Flair training in the AWA and Vern's barn and all that stuff, but they showed him working with a couple of people as in training with Vern Gagne. Vern was not laying hands on Rick.
No. Training with Chris Taylor.
Shot. Yeah. And that was actually, I remember when Chris Taylor made his pro debut, he was so hot coming out of the 72 Olympics, him and Patera, they actually put Chris Taylor's debut pro wrestling match. And we talk about now how unfair it is to have a national TV debut. Chris Taylor's first pro match was in the AWA territory, and you're probably going to tell me what town it was here in a minute, against Mad Dog Vachon. And they taped the match and aired it on ABC's Wide World of Sports when it was one of the biggest network sports programs on television. And I watched it that afternoon, and it was cool. And Mad Dog actually fucking either potatoed or bit or bladed the bridge of Chris Taylor's nose so that he was really bleeding, and the announcers could say Chris Taylor is really bleeding from that nose wound. And Mad Dog's hopping around and everything. But at that time, Ric Flair was a young rookie that may or may not make it, and he was fodder in the class, and Chris Taylor and Ken Patera were the main focus, and Patera obviously became a star. Chris Taylor made it 2 years and quit the business and died of early death of his weight issues, and Flair became the biggest star in modern wrestling. So you never know.
Yeah, and they misidentified a bunch of footage. They even had him winning the Royal Rumble. They said WWF debut.
Yeah, that's another thing. They fudged on that because the Rumble robe and the Rumble boots and everything, but it was his WWE pay-per-view debut, right? It was a fudge there.
No, I don't even think it was that.
Was it not even that? Was he at Survivor Series the year before? I think
he did Survivor Series 91, yeah.
But anyway, so Darius Rucker, great guy, great wrestling fan. You could tell how much that shit meant to him. But then meanwhile, they've sent Rick's son-in-law, Conrad Thompson, out with AJ, and they go to his house. Charlotte just happened to be hanging around. She's in Huntsville regularly. But we know it was the wintertime because we could see people's breath outside the house, and so this has been a while back. But that's where I've noticed again, when they showed the Charlotte highlights, she's got the same star look. She carries herself like somebody with the robe and the entrance as her dad did. And anyway, one collectible story that they didn't tell while they were at Conrad's house, they mentioned that he has the original big gold belt from 1986. They didn't tell the entire story of how he obtained it. Certain people's names may not be able to be uttered on a WWF program or WWE program, but it's amazing what 60 grand or so and a couple of shoe boxes in cash will do for you. Anyway, this is where it got complicated, because while Ric Flair is saying that he thought that Darius Rucker might have had the butterfly robe that he bought in a charity auction in the 90s, Conrad, who you would think that Conrad and Flair have passed some conversation, Conrad saying, I don't know where it is. I've been looking for it for years. So one would have thought they would have cross-referenced. But anyway, unfortunately, that was not the robe that Darius Rucker got. It was the white one. So anyway, now they go to North Carolina to West Potter while Ric Flair has lunch with David Crockett. I love this because it got a chance for them to reminisce and talk about the plane crash, and they had the plane crash segment. They didn't mention Tim Woods saving wrestling that day. You can only get that story in the graphic novel Behind the Curtain by Jim Cornette, available whenever JimCornette.com goes back on the air and live. And
they couldn't agree who messed up dinner. Was it Dusty or the accountant?
Yeah. But to ask David Crockett where that robe would have been was just, no, that was the cover story so they could tell the story of the plane crash, which was a great segment. And I liked it. But David would not know where the goddamn robe was any more than anybody else. And I'm sure he hasn't given it any thought in the last 30 years. But they kind of beat around the bush and made a couple of jokes about Flair or a number of people in the Horsemen losing things. And I won't mention any names. I don't know who's still married to their significant others or whatever. But when the Horsemen were on the road, and this was, I've talked about the schedule, and Flair was a fucking freak of nature. We would all be on a flight somewhere from somewhere. We'd be back in coach at 7:00 in the morning, and everybody's like, oh, fuck it, I don't want to be on this plane. And Flair comes in a 3-piece suit, and he's got his brush, and he's brushing his hair in one fucking hand, and he's got the belt bag in the other hand and the suit bag over his shoulder. And hey, guys, it's a great day. And he's sitting down in first class, and he's chatting up the stewardesses. But that was, if you flew from 7 to 10 in the morning, then you got somewhere, then you checked in, and then you probably went to work out, if you were one of those guys, or if you were a regular human like me, you might have got a couple hours of sleep, and then you drive to the show, and then you're at the show, and midnight, and you're coming back, you do it every day. With that kind of schedule, plus the extracurricular partying and after show activities that the Horsemen were involved in, they had to often have a suitable explanation for why they came home without a variety of their cash and valuables on certain occasions. So they would often try out these stories on the road, as it were, with the boys. And if the boys in the locker room were like, oh, shit, and had some sympathy, then it might pass by the wife at home or whatever, right? And if the boys were shooting the shit out of it, then you probably need to polish that story. I mean, one of the many people who were involved in the Horsemen, who shall remain nameless, his story for losing you remember the bank bags, right? That was before the fanny pack. Or is this a thing that people remember now about wrestling?
I think so. I mean, are you comparing it to the fanny pack? That's what's throwing me off a little bit.
In the 80s, guys weren't quite wearing fanny packs yet. The mid-80s, they had the bank bags first. This was a thing. In Louisiana, everybody had one. In Charlotte, for a while, guys had them. You know the zipper bank bag? It says Third National Bank, and it's a zipper, and businesses bring in cash in it, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the bank bags.
Yeah.
Well, all the guys use bank bags for their fucking wallets because, for example, in Louisiana, the guys after promos on Wednesdays in Shreveport at Channel 3 would get their checks at interviews, and I would take mine and take it back to Alexandria where I was living and deposit it in my checking account. But all the guys, because they were making these size checks and they just wanted to see the money, in the couple hours you had between the time interviews were over and the time you went to TV that night at the Irish McNeil Boys Club or on your way out of town to a spot show if it wasn't TV night, they'd go to the fucking bank near the TV station that dealt with Mid-South Wrestling and all the wrestlers, and they'd cash their checks. And they would have $3,000-$4,000 in cash. This was 1984, stuck in this bank bag along with their driver's license, if anybody had a credit card. You remember the jewelry was a big thing back then, where guys were getting those big gold bracelets and big gold chains with the gold double eagle $20 bill in them, and just thousands of dollars. Dr. Death Steve Williams had a watch that I could have worn for a fucking belt. It was all gold and jewels and these. Anyway, they'd have all this jewelry and shit. They'd have $10,000 worth of shit in their bank bag. And I'm like, what the fuck? But it was a status thing, and who's going to take it away from them, right? Who's going to say, hey, come here, Hercules Hernandez, I need your fucking bank bag. But guys would get inebriated or get hurried or get, whatever in a rush, and sometimes they'd get left behind. So one time anyway, one of the Horsemen, his story for losing his bank bag with his driver's license, a lot of cash, and a couple of pieces of jewelry was that he had worked out at the hotel gym and then had gone in the bathroom and was sitting there with his pants around his ankles taking a shit, and his bank bag was sitting there, and a hand came from the next stall and took it and ran off. By the time he could get his pants up and everything, it was too late. That was a story that they said, okay, we'll go with that. But a lot of you getting up early in the morning, it's before daylight. You're in an unfamiliar hotel room every night, and you leave a bag, especially if you put it. I always do what I call a stupid check. And I've been doing that for 30 years. Every time I leave a hotel room, I look in every place that anything of mine could conceivably be. But sometimes, let's say your fucking ring outfit was dirty, so you washed it out, but you couldn't hang it on the shower curtain rod where you usually hang it because there's one of those weird fucking shower curtain rods, so you put it on the back of the goddamn bathroom door, but then you leave the bathroom door open and you don't realize it's hanging on the back and it's gone. So anyway, these things happen.
How many times did it happen to you? Over 35 years, how many times did you leave a bag or leave something in a hotel room?
I can tell you one night in Albany, in Albany, New York, after a Raw, I got in the car and drove almost all the way back home to Connecticut and realized 30 miles from home I had left my briefcase. And the reason I left my briefcase is because they did a locker room shoot and moved my briefcase from where it was sitting next to my fucking suit bag and some other kind of carry-on bag to dress the set and didn't move it back. And luckily, believe it or not, of all people, Jake the Snake Roberts, I knew, had stayed overnight at a hotel, and I was able, when I got home, to call him at that hotel and he got somebody to run back over, because they were still tearing down, to run back over to the fucking building and get it. I left, God damn it, one of the All Japan, one of the warm-up suits. Remember the Capital Sports warm-up suits?
Oh, yeah, those are awesome. Those are the best.
Bobby Fulton brought me one back, and I still have it, but he brought me one back that fit even better the second time, but I left the goddamn jacket in a locker in a show in the Carolinas somewhere. I've never lost a bag or a wallet. I'm, as you can imagine, a little anal about things like that. I've always kept track of my shit. I've only locked my keys in my car one time in my life. I've never lost my wallet. It was misdirected one time, and more on that later, in a bag, but it came back to me the next day. But still, shit like that happens every so often. Anyway, back to this program.
Yeah, maybe more often if you're Ric Flair.
Well, yeah, because it was a lot harder road schedule, and there were other, lack of sleep and alcohol and etc. They did an emotional segment about Reed, and this is really it. When you think about this, Charlotte was never going to be a wrestler. Reed and David both wanted to be wrestlers and follow in their father's footsteps, and David was at OVW for a while and WCW. It wasn't a natural thing to him. Reed looked like he was probably going to be better as a pro, didn't get the opportunity. But between both of Rick's sons and his daughter, the one offspring that didn't want to be a wrestler turned out, because she was a great athlete, and I mean, she'd been a tremendous athlete from the time she was a kid in school. But she's the most natural worker of the family, and she ends up being the second generation star. There's a trivia question for you, or a stumper or whatever. When has ever the offspring of a famous wrestler, the daughter, been more talented in the ring than the sons? Get back to me.
Luna Vachon.
Well, wait a minute now. There were no sons. Did I catch you in a loophole?
I'm trying to think who had a daughter and a son. I mean, that's what I'm trying to think of now. That worked.
There were no Vachon sons that got in wrestling.
Baby Doll didn't have a working brother.
Nope.
Who had a son and a daughter that wrestled? Well, I'm not going to name one of them. We just fucking talked about on Dark Side of the Ring. But
okay, yeah. Well,
yeah. Other than that,
but there you go. But anyway, this is a unique situation. Old Wes Potter in North Carolina has some of those great old Carolinas posters, and they showed the Flair and race footage. Thank God they edited out where Gene Kiniski was a great wrestling champion, but God, he was a horrible referee and botched that Starrcade finish bad.
Hey, they made that match look fantastic in clip form. Go watch that match. I've said it before. Yeah. There are people who are sick of me saying it. I don't care. The worst match. Flair and race at Starrcade 83. For all that buildup, that match to me was so dry, and the crossbody was bizarre, and Kiniski was the worst guest referee of all time. But it looked great in clips.
Yeah, in highlights it looks great. No, that was and I've seen Ric Flair and Harley Race have great matches. That was not amongst them. That was the worst Flair race match of all time and the biggest showcase. But anyway, and part of it was timing issues, and part of it was rushing, and part of it was Kiniski, and part of it blah blah blah. But anyway, but however, Wes Potter, funnily enough, has the Starrcade robe, but doesn't know where the butterfly robe is, but he's also got the Rumble boots. So now we start dickering around. Old AJ offers $60,000 for the boots and the robe, but he won't sell. But when Charlotte asked him to loan them for a period of time, when have they broken ground on the Hall of Fame? Is this like, okay, in 5 years down the road, we're going to ask to borrow these for a period of time? But anyway, he said okay to that. They showed footage.
This is the episode that AJ started pissing me off. Just the whole, the person has no interest in selling. All right, here's what we're going to offer you. And it's always some bullshit offer. And I always feel bad. I mean, we'll talk about it later. I felt so bad for Charles Robinson watching this thing. Leave the man alone. Get out of his house.
Give him some peace.
Flair knew it was wrong. He had to leave the room. He knew this guilt trip was wrong. This poor referee has this. It means something to him. Get the fuck out of his house, AJ.
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
At one point, AJ talking about that robe, he goes, and that's the robe that Ric Flair wore in the iconic photo. What iconic photo? I can't think of what iconic photo he wore that photo in. Tell me which one, AJ. Wrestling historian AJ. Wrestling collector AJ. But anyway, I'll go back to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That's a safe shot every time, however. But one of the shots that they showed of Rick with celebrities was Rick and Burt Reynolds. And I don't know what they were talking about, but they had a mutual friend because Barry Windham's girlfriend at the time, and I think her name was Pam.
That's right.
Okay, you remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like that Barry was bringing his girlfriend to the matches all the time, so I wasn't, closely acquainted. But he brings this young lady to the trip we made to, oh God, it wasn't Las Vegas, so it was St. Martin, the NWA meeting that Crockett took all the top guys. He flew them all down to St. Martin when he was the last vestige of the NWA, and he wrote it off, but he gave the guys a 3 or 4 day vacation. And Barry Windham brought Pam because that's who he was seeing at the time. And the biggest thing I remember out of her is I never saw the poor girl sit down one time that weekend because the dresses that she was wearing were so tight she couldn't even bend at the waist. Amazing shape.
Pam Seals.
And son of a gun, wouldn't you know who won the pony? Not to try to knock Pam as saying she looked anything like a pony. She was a thoroughbred. But I look on TV a few years later on one of these Access Hollywood shows or whatever, and Burt Reynolds' girlfriend is Pam from St. Martin that came down with Windham. Anyway, I did not know that Ric Flair was in a Bugs Bunny video. But apparently not only is Bugs a big fan, but also he had Rick in some of his videos. And they showed all the NFL and the NBA guys strutting and imitating Flair. And then Flair asked Bunny where the robe was. And Bunny didn't look like he knew where his goddamn next meal was coming from, even though he's a multimillionaire. He didn't look like he would be keeping track of Ric Flair's robes from 25 years ago.
Hey, say what you want. We've seen a lot of celebrities do things with wrestling. You may not like his music. He seems respectful.
He's a nice guy. Yeah, he is. You can tell this really means a lot to him.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give him a break from now on.
Did you see that interview he did? It was like I think on HBO. It was like him, LeBron James, Jay-Z, like several major celebrities just sitting around talking. And one of them asked him about wrestling, and he said it's real. It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Just the simplest bumps on the first day kill you. He was very respectful. I got a lot of respect for him. The way he's treated wrestling.
If he just start doing some Skinnerd. Just sing some Skinnerd, man. Anyway, so about now here in the program, they find the breaking news that some guy sold it for $10,000 on eBay. But obviously the buyer's name is not out there publicly, so they call Conrad and he knows. And basically that was the story. The hotel guy sold it to pay for his father's tombstone. But the buyer, the guy who bought it, didn't want publicity and sent somebody else to Richmond, Virginia to negotiate and haggle over it. And I say they've got a great production crew. Actually, this is an A&E production. It wasn't the WWE crew, but a little tip, folks, when you're shooting people riding in a car like AJ and Ric Flair were, and when AJ speaks, the camera's on him and he's driving 60 miles an hour. But when Flair reacts to what the guy just said and the camera's on him and they're completely stopped, that's called a jump cut. And you might not want to do that anymore. It looked like they just ran into a wall suddenly. They did a segment on Flair versus Jim Herd. I will never get tired of seeing Jim Herd buried in any forum, especially national television. And I can testify that Rick was kind in his assessment of everything he said about he hated Jim Herd probably worse than I did. If that is a thing you can wrap your head around.
You know what's crazy? It's such a long time ago. It really is. Other than Jim Barnett, everyone is alive. You, Kevin, okay. Rick, Herd,
yeah.
Juster,
yeah,
Jim Ross,
yeah,
Jody Hamilton,
yeah,
Ole,
yeah.
Everyone who was involved in the behind the scenes of WCW at that time is still with us. It's kind of crazy. It's a long time ago.
And you've never heard any of those people say anything good about Jim Herd.
Except Jim Herd.
Anyway, so they met Rick Rosenberg, if that is indeed his real name. He was the negotiator on the owner's behalf, and he looked like a slimy little pissant. And basically, they offer $50,000 for a robe that they've said the value is 70 to 90, but the guy paid 10. So that's when the guy instead, he wants to trade. He wants the jungle robe and Ric Flair's boots in trade for the butterfly robe. And so Conrad says, I'll throw the boots in, but Charles Robinson has the jungle robe. And there's where you alluded. They go to Charlotte. Charles Robinson, nicest guy in the world. And he's got Great Carolina's posters also. He's got the jungle robe. And obviously Rick knew that because he got it from Rick. And Charles wants to be buried in the jungle robe. And they're trying to fucking strong arm him out of it, right? And that's when poor little Nate breaks down crying. Rick has to hug him. So then they
Rick
go
leaves.
back.
Rick has to leave the room.
Has to walk out of the room.
He knows this is wrong. He knows. This is completely wrong. This guy loves you. Rick named like 4 different people on this show as his biggest fan. And Charles Robinson was one of them. This guy's my biggest fan. So let me leave him in a room alone with AJ.
But it was all, in the end, it worked out because I never liked the jungle robe as much as the gold robe, which is an Olivia robe that Ben Brown, the archivist, arranged to trade to Charles so they could take the jungle robe, and he got the gold one. The gold one's cooler anyway. But anyway, so they go back to the guy with the jungle robe and the boots, and now the guy wants $25,000 thrown in. And then they all huddle up. And since the billion-dollar publicly traded company is apparently on a strict budget, Conrad's going to kick in the $25,000 and the boots. And then they're going to put that together with the jungle robe to co-buy the butterfly robe. So they meet at a restaurant, somewhere which I guess is better than a Home Depot parking lot with $60,000 in shoeboxes. And when now the guy wants more cash. He wants the jungle robe, the boots, and $50,000. Or no, he wants more cash. They offer 50 and he wants 60. And this is where I immediately knew it was a complete work because Flair would have told him to fuck off. By that point, this guy keeps changing this deal. So finally they did it, and the most expensive robe in the history of robes is now somewhere under their control. I loved the old footage.
Yeah, could have used some more of it.
Could have used some more of the old footage in place of almost all the new footage, except for Charles Robinson. I'm glad to Charles Robinson on TV, Lance Russell on TV here lately. We're seeing some of our old friends we haven't seen in a while.
That's right.
And that's all I got to say about that.
Well, that was the Ric Flair episode of Most Wanted Treasures. I guess the last episode at least of the season. Do we know for sure if they're bringing the show back?
I would have to think everything that they have done.
What else are they going to look for?
Well, no, but I mean, everything they've done on the classic wrestlers has been a rating success and has, in a lot of cases, outrated the modern wrestling programs themselves. So I would have to think that they're going to do more biographies, more, even if it's not the exact same show. I would think that this has gotten A&E some numbers that they have not gotten with every single bit of their programming. So they're going to want to do some more stuff. And I don't blame them because, again, why do you think our show is so successful? Because there's a lot of people who used to like wrestling that don't anymore, that still want to hear about the people that they liked and the shit they liked. They just can't stand to look at the modern stuff. So if you tell these people, yeah, we're going to have a biography on this great wrestler or that big star of the 80s, 90s, or whatever, people know who they are and they want to see it. And they know they won't have to watch kids tumbling.
Well, you know, Jim, one thing Ric Flair was always known for, and you saw a little bit of it in some of those archival clips, was what great shape he was in, the cardio. Oh, he was known for being on that Stairmaster almost as much as he was known for being on some of those people at the Marriott. But
hey, wait a minute now. He got his cardio in a variety of ways. But yes, Flair had a fully equipped gym in his house. Flair would start out the day with an hour on the Stairmaster. He was a machine. He was just a beast.
Well, if he was listening right now, I would say, hey, Rick, what about Echelon?
Boy, we would have some news for him. And I would be surprised if even right now, at the age of 72 or whatever the case, if Ric Flair is not all over this. Have you heard about the folks at Echelon? They're in the upper echelon. It's ECHELON, by the way. And basically, they have a fully equipped service where they can bring the gym home to you. If you've always wanted to get in shape, but you don't have time to get to the gym, they bring the gym home. They've got workout equipment, a workout community, and instructors' motivation right in the comfort of your own home. And Brian, you've seen some of the many items and the full range of affordable workout equipment that they've got, the stationary bikes, the smart rowers, the sleek fitness screens, the auto-folding treadmill, but it's all connected with the Echelon experience, which is around-the-clock classes for the entire family, full-body workout programs. One membership can cover a family of 5, and apparently, the way that I'm understanding this modern technology is, you get this equipment, you put it in, they've got a fitness app, and you can go into these classes, listen to great music, and you can basically cheer each other on and co-intermingle with the other people exercising on these various pieces of equipment in the privacy of their own homes. Is that basically correct?
Basically correct.
Basically, I didn't mean to give just every minute goddamn detail, but it's a fitness experience is what it is.
That's right.
Just like the Jim Cornette experience. And right now, folks, on either the experience or the Drive-Thru fans, you all are our fans and our listeners, and you can get a special offer. I forgot what show it was. You get a special offer right now for a limited time only. Start your 30-day risk-free trial offer with Echelon's EX3 exercise bike for just $1. A risk-free offer. Try it out for 30 days. Echelon's EX3 bike for $1 and free shipping. The only way to get this offer is go to echelonfit.com. We mentioned it. ECHELON. echelonfit.com/drive. echelonfit.com/drive. The Echelon EX3 bike 30-day free risk offer, or risk-free offer. It's a free risk offer and a risk-free offer for only $1. You can get all the information at echelonfit.com and be sure to use the /of-drive. And you can, I mean, it's too late for me. Let's face it. I get blown up jogging the memory.
No, it's never too late for you. I think you are the perfect spokesman, though, for Echelon, considering that phrase early on in the copy. Echelon brings the gym home.
Yes, in the comfort of your own home, and that's where I spend the majority of my time. But
there'll be a whole bunch of commercials though with you on random doorsteps. Bring the gym home.
Yes.
Not this gym. This gym.
Any gym that you like, just bring him home. Well, let's bring this spot home. There you have it. EchelonFit.com/drive, folks. Join the community of 25,000 members in this Echelon business who can give you that extra push in your workout.